Good morning, bienvenidos. So excited that you're all here and that we could come together today to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. Woo! This is great. Love it. Excellent. The official welcome to Rio Salado College's 2023 Hispanic Heritage Month celebration. I want to, for those of you who might not be aware, although maybe most of you are, it was President Lyndon Johnson who was the first president to observe Hispanic Heritage Week. And he did that back in 1968. And then it was later by then President Ronald Reagan expanded into a month-long observance, which was then enacted into law on August 17th, 1988. So we're excited to be a part of this national celebration, and we're very excited to have our guests with us who we will introduce shortly. Rio Salado College is also proud to have received the Hispanic Serving Institution designation more recently. And so that's a designation from the Department of Education, the Federal Department of Education, that designates colleges or universities that serve more than 25% of their student population identifies as Hispanic or Latino. So at Rio, our overall student population we are at just about 30% of our student body identifies as Hispanic or Latino. And within our adult basic education program, which I am so sorry to our guest speaker, Alexis, who I was chewing her ear off about this because I'm so excited about it. But we do a lot of work serving across the whole Maricopa County, serving students who are in need of completing their high school equivalency, learning English, and then we're co-enrolling them at the same time in programs where they're earning college certificates as well, and 68% of that student body is Hispanic or Latino. So we're really excited about the impact, because part of receiving an HSI designation is that you're working much more intentionally and with focus to support that student population. So, and the federal government has enacted great support for this work. As an example, and I see our colleague Henry Smith back there, who is hired to help us lead. We received a almost $3 million grant from the federal government to do this work with greater intention, greater support, to do some innovative practices. Yeah, it's really great. Thank you. It's super. So, as before we get going with the real heart of the program, I want to thank a few people. So first, those who are here from our DEIB Council, that's our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Council. Can you just raise your hand and wave? Thank you so much for the work you do. We so appreciate your leadership. I'd like to thank the planning team, the event committee, and the employee volunteers. Will you guys just raise your hand so we can thank you? It's a lot of hours, a lot of work that you all do to make this happen. And then, of course, our cafe and auxiliary services teams, you are amazing. The food, the setup. They always seem to step out of the room when we thank them, but I hope they can hear us out there because they really do excellent work always. And then finally, our student guest moderators and speaker, we're so appreciative for your student leadership, the excellence you bring to everything you do. Thank you for having chosen Rio, letting us be a part of your journey. So this is our student table up front here. Thank you. So next, I'm going to start introducing our panelists. I will read some short bios for each panelist, and then I'll ask you to come up and join me on stage after I read your bio. So let's first begin with Mr. Alejandro Chavez, who is a very passionate, very dedicated community leader who's long been dedicated to political organizing and advocating for all demographics, locally, nationally, and internationally. Alejandro grew up in a family where organizing and leadership development were an integral part of life. Learning from his father and his grandfather, the late great civil rights activist Cesar Chavez, he served as a campaign manager for Ruben Gallego's successful first run for state representative. He worked with MoveOn.org to promote diplomatic solutions in the Middle East. And he also served as the senior electoral campaign manager with Democracy for America. Alejandro also worked to elect Representative Veronica Escobar, the first Latina congresswoman in Texas, as well as Nevada Senator Catherine Cortez Masto as the first Latina U.S. Senator. Alejandro shares that he believes that the more people and communities unite, the more powerful impact they can make nationally. Couldn't agree with you more. He's dedicated his professional life to putting his personal beliefs into action. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Alejandro Chavez to the stage. Woo! Yeah. Yep, go ahead. Next, Ms. Alexis Meruelo. I was gonna try to get my R rolled correctly, but I went the safe route, sorry. Ms. Meruelo is the Chief Vision and Purpose Officer for Meruelo Group. Alexis oversees all culture, impact, and community programs for Meruelo Group's portfolio of companies. She works to drive impact across the companies and communities in which they do business. Her work and expertise range across industries, including hotels, food manufacturing, and of course, professional sports. We've all seen Howler somewhere today. She also serves as the chairwoman of the Arizona Coyotes Foundation, which strives to enhance the quality of life throughout Arizona by supporting organizations and programs that promote access to education. Sorry, it promotes access to not only education, but also health and wellness and economic advancement for underserved and diverse communities. Thank you for that work, Alexis. Alexis is fully committed to leveraging the power of sports to build a stronger, healthier, and more vibrant community. She's also very proud to continue building the Meruelo family's commitment to improving the lives of others in the Valley community. And she is dedicated to ensuring that her family's legacy continues to flourish within all philanthropic endeavors. Thank you so much, Ms. Meruelo, for joining us. Please join us up on stage. I can't do my usual cheer because I'm at the mic. Sure. Okay, and now, next I'm going to introduce our what? What was that? Our two student panelists. So first, I'm very excited to introduce our student senator for this academic year, Ms. Becca Namachanja. Becca began her studies at Rio Salado College in November of 2020. She is pursuing an associate degree in behavioral health sciences with a focus on addictions and substance abuse counseling. After her selection as Rio Salado's student senator, Becca was then elected, and it's not a surprise to those who know her, she was then elected as chair of the Maricopa Community College District Student Senator Board. Yeah, it's a pretty big deal. Last year, Becca was a member of Maricopa Community College's Student Public Policy Forum, which gave her the opportunity to take part in one-on-one meetings with congressional staff and advocacy groups in Washington, D.C. Becca is set to graduate and continue her educational journey with a graduate degree in psychology at one of Arizona's state universities. Please join me in welcoming Becca Namachanja. Two panelists, two moderators. So now, our second moderator, Saffron Wells. Saffron is pursuing an associate degree in communications from Rio Salado because, and I love this, she believes effective communication is essential in today's world. Couldn't agree more, Saffron. Saffron serves as a PTK chapter leader and communications manager and president of the Fellowship Committee. She also works part-time in Rio Salado's Adult ACE Scholarship Program. Saffron plans to continue her education to earn a bachelor's degree and is committed to fostering positive connections. So, please join me in welcoming Saffron Wells to the stage. So with that said, we are excited to engage with our outstanding panelists. So Becca and Saffron, I hand it over to you. Thank you so much. Here, Saffron. I have a microphone. Saffron. Oh, there you go. Okay, so this is one of those moments you're a little embarrassed of yourself. We also have a very honored guest in our audience today, and please forgive me, Dr. Narini. Dr. Tom Narini serves on the governing board for the Maricopa County Community Colleges. Thank you so much, Dr. Narini, for joining us. We really appreciate you being here.
All right, that's an awesome welcome. So thank you guys both for being here today. I believe I will be getting us started. So this is a two-part question for both of you. How did your family story shape who you are? And why do you feel it's important for communities to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month? Ms. Meruelo, let's start with you.
Hello, hello. There we go. Good morning. So that's a great question, and one that is perfect to start off with, because I think I can give a little bit of the background and the history of our family and where we started and then where we are today. So a little bit about my parents. So they both are Cubanos, and they came from Bejucal y Havana in Cuba. And when they both moved here, they both met actually in a Downey community in Los Angeles in their 20s, and so that's how they met. And so being in a Hispanic household, to me, you know, we grew up eating fricase and dancing salsa, and that's just, you know, how it was, right? So don't let the blonde hair fool you. Soy cubana, 100%. And Spanish was my first language, and I'm really blessed that I got to speak that in the house. So for me, that was special. So the way it all kind of started is my dad, when he was in his 20s, he really was passionate about business, and when he got to this country, he was really determined to one day, as a little boy, his dream was always to own a sports team, and that was since he was a little boy. And so the first thing he got into, though, because he saw this gap in the market in downtown LA, was pizza. And so he bought a broken little pizza shop in downtown LA, and he called it La Pizza Loca because, and I'll tell you why, marketing. He actually started, his first job was working at El Pollo Loco and flipping chickens, and that was his first job. And so he was like, well, I can kind of turn it into something else, and so he named it La Pizza Loca, which is how that started. And so when he was 21, he bought his first store, and the reason it took off was because he marketed to the Hispanic market, right? And so he created all these flavors that were all geared in spices. So jalapenos, refried beans, it was called La Mexicana, and it completely took off in LA. And he hadn't paid anything marketing. He just made these huge, annoying yellow flyers, and he put them all over downtown and was like, buy one, get one free. And La Gigante. And it took off. And so when he was 21, he had one store. By the time he was 28, he had broken, I believe it was over 60 stores and $75 million in net sales. And so the power of the Hispanic market, right? Because it was super untapped and people were not paying attention to the flavors that they wanted. And at the time, it was only Little Caesars, right? So that's how it started. And so fast forward, right, 20 more years, because he's 60 now, he realized that he had a passion for turning around broken companies, right? And so that's how it all kind of went hand in hand. So one company went to the next, and what he did was he just found that he could turn it around if we had the right team around him and the right people around him, and that was his determination. So he went into real estate and banking and hotels, radio stations, food manufacturing. I'm probably missing a few. And so today we own over 30 different companies in over 10 different industries with over 8,000 employees. So that's the story of how we became. And the latest and obviously most exciting acquisition was in 2019 with the Arizona Coyotes. And when that happened, we became the first ever Hispanic owners in NHL history. Yep. And then proceeded to hire the first ever Hispanic CEO in not only the NHL, but also the NBA, the NFL, and all the other 4 major sports teams in the United States. So, yeah. And so that's a little bit about how my family shaped me, right? So that's how we grew up. That's the story, and I'm sure we'll share more as we continue.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing. Cool. All right, and Mr. Chavez?
Awesome. Great. First, I want to make sure that we take a moment also to thank all the farm workers and people who picked the food and picked the products and put it on the tables so it can come here and the great staff can prepare it. And I think that goes to kind of shape who I am, right? And I think I've had the opportunity to meet Martin Luther King III, Jimmy Carter's son, and one of the things we've always talked about, and I'm sure it's true with your father, is that no matter what they became, my grandfather was always a farm worker at heart. I'm sure your father's always that pizza man at heart, right? No matter what, right? and that there's something about that, right? Jimmy Carter was always a bean farmer, no matter what he became. Martin Luther King was always a preacher, right? Even though they became civil rights icon, even though they became those things. And I think that when you're in a family of that, that's what you grow up with. And that's the values you grew up with. You grew up with the values of a farm worker. You know, we grow up with the values of understanding the hardships that people face, sometimes us, sometimes others, and that we also understand the value of celebrating that work, that it's not necessarily about having a big gala in the Biltmore and all that, that sometimes it's in a backyard. It's a carne asada. Sometimes it's not even planned. People just started coming over, right? I don't know about you, but, okay, for me, I grew up in the farm worker movement. My parents' wedding was 300 people. Now, they didn't know them all, but no one had any money. So anytime anyone did anything, everyone just partied. My grandfather would invite the whole movement. And that's how I think that's expressed my values, that everybody's invited to the table, right? If we got to bring a few more chairs, cool. We got to break out a little bit more food, cool. We'll figure it out. And I think that that's what shaped me in my persona and my way of my work, of thinking of things, that everybody's welcome. You know, it's not about what's happening. It's about who we are. That the work is not about numbers and metrics and issues. That's all the other end. What it actually comes down to is people. It comes down to relationships. It comes down to connections. You know, in my line of work, I always tell people, if you think that it's just about people seeing the numbers and doing the right thing, I'd be out of work. We'd put billboards up, we'd have pie charts. Everybody would drive by and be like, oh, this group's hurting, or oh, that group's impacted. And they would change their opinion on how we do things. But that's not it. We know that we need to tell stories. We need to tell narratives. We need to carry it on. And I know that in my shaping, you know, it goes back to even if you think back to the first organizers, I think of someone like Harriet Tubman, who was an organizer. And, you know, the freedom for slaves was not hey, you're going to go down to this tree, you're going to make a left, and you're going to make a right, and you're going to go down to this. It wasn't that. It was done through folklore. And through the Latino community, we also do it, right? We have our stories that we tell, and we tell them to scare our children, La Llorona, right? The list goes on, right? And all these things that we tell each other. But I think sometimes we forget that those are actually really important parts of our work and important parts of us being connected to each other that allow us to break down. It doesn't matter whether you're Latino or you're black or whatever. Your family told stories, and they told these crazy, wild stories, and you didn't believe them. And you're like, no way, that was crazy. I mean, one point you did, but as you get older, you start to realize that they actually were stories of your family's values, especially being Cubanos. I'm sure there's many stories that you all had that are unique to you, to not just your culture, but to your family within that culture and its experience. So I think that that's what has always shaped me and helped shape my work.
All right, and I think I'll take over a little bit here. And you touched a little bit on this, Mr. Chavez, but could you both share with us someone or something or a situation that perhaps, you know, and you both come from rich family histories, but a unique situation or a person that kind of inspired you to uniquely embrace your heritage, your advocacy for others, and maybe encouraged you to celebrate who and what you are?
That's a great question. So I would say there's multiple moments, right? I don't think there's one specific moment that led to me carrying the torch or being inspired. But I will name a few people I think that probably have impacted me over time. So the first being my mom. She's like an angel, but truly, I think there were so many experiences growing up where she was, I don't know, I don't even know how to explain it, misjudged, or people would overlook her. And, you know, they'd be like, why are you speaking Spanish? We're in America. Or why, you know, just things like that. And they were small jabs over time, but watching her in those moments really shaped me, because she's like, nope, we are who we are. Nope, that's who we are, right? And I knew that going to school, like, there was so many kids that did it differently, or you know, weren't doing the same thing that we were doing as a Cuban family, like making tamales. But that was okay, right? And I think my parents showed me that, like, it didn't matter what the rest of the world said. It was like, no, that's who we are, and we're proud of it, and don't listen to the noise. So I think for me, it was important to see my parents mirror that, because they weren't really afraid to be themselves. And now, to fast forward in today's culture and society, oh my gosh, how important it is, right? To just authentically be you. And I think that's the message I would carry, is like, it doesn't matter, right, anymore. The world's gonna think what the world wants to think, but you know who you are. So and then the other one I would say is actually Javier Gutierrez, our CEO. So I don't know how many of you have known him or heard of him, but it's funny because he actually was a mentor to me when I was 15 years old. And he worked for Meruelo Group previously to being a part of the Coyotes. So he had zero sports experience before we hired him. But he had actually helped us in so many different ways in business. And I got to experience that as a little girl. And he would take me to all these different conferences and dinners and introduce me as if I was 45 and had all the experience in the world. And he'd walk into these rooms, and it was Wall Street, or it was Wall Street America, or whatever room we were in, and whether it was predominantly white or different from him, he didn't let that stop him, right? And he just walked in there, and didn't matter, me and him. And getting to see that, I think, was special, but also is a testament to who he is as a person and as a leader, because if he's willing to do that for a 15-year-old girl, he's willing to do that for anybody, and he still does that for any person he meets, for any kid he meets, any student. He'll give his card, he'll say, contact me. It's just who he is, and it's really special to see. So I would say those are the couple people that have shaped me.
So my stepmom was Cuban for like 40 years. I spent summers in Miami, and in Coral Gables, like real Cuban, right?
Woo.
And right. And I got a best Cuban story to tell you about the parrot jungle when we were kids. We'll chat afterwards. You're gonna be like, oh my God, she's the most Cuban person ever. You know, for me, I think it's moments, and I think it's not even moments that I even acknowledge till now. So one of them is a story that my grandfather. So right next to his house, he had, you know, maybe it was something, I don't know, it didn't seem very big, probably half an acre, if that. And he would grow things in it, watermelon, things for agua frescas, watermelon, cantaloupe, blah, blah, blah. And he'd have us help him. And we'd go for there for the summers, 8, 9, help him pick up things. And I just assumed he was an old man who needed help, even though he was in great shape and all these things. He did yoga. And then as I got older, I'm like, wow, all these people would have helped him. Like, all these people would have done the work for him. Like, I never got it. And as I've gotten older, as we do, we reflect on moments, I realized that that was never about picking the product. It was about reminding us that we were one generation from farm workers. No matter what we ever accomplished in our life, him, my father, my tios, my tias, and everybody around them were farm workers. They picked food. And there's something about going out there that you know, it wasn't a lot of labor. It wasn't hard for me or anything. I was a kid. But the idea that this is where we came from. And there's something about it that as you become older and you realize these things, and you see those moments. And I think that's the moments that stick out with me with my grandfather. The lessons that he provided for us. You know, when I think about the summer when he fasted in 1988, I was 10, and I was there. And I was there messing around with my cousins. We were all hanging out. It was fun. Once again, now I reflect on it. Every day we had 3 masses, every day. No matter what we were doing, you had to go to mass. Parents didn't care. You guys could be running around. We were in an area where we were at the 40 acres where it's just open. You could do whatever the hell you want. And, you know, we're kids. We're just doing whatever. But you had to be there for the morning mass. You had to be there for midday lunch and dinner, but it was the masses you needed. Who cares if you ate? That's your business. But you had to be there for the masses. I never really understood it. Whatever. But the more and more I realized it was that his movement was much about faith. And that, you know, he wrote a prayer. And for people, prayer isn't their thing, and I understand that. But think of it as a poem, right? And in it, it was always about reminding us where we came from, constantly. It starts with, show me the suffering of the most miserable so I will know my people's plight. And it ends with, sorry, I'm going to do it in my whole head. I could do it, but it would be here for a while. Help us love even those who hate us so we could change the world, right? And that's the progression that it takes. And so for me, it's a constant. There's people I meet. I can't tell you how many times I come into things like this and somebody brings their abuela who tells me, hey, I'm retired. I never thought I'd retire as a farm worker. And there's just moments like that touch me and make me remember the work is always about the people. My grandfather was saying, it was never about the lettuce, it was never about the grapes, it was always about the people. And I think those are the moments, even to this day, where I meet people that marched with him, walked with him, farm workers that walked off, people's grandparents who are retired, people whose grandparents got a burial. Remember, they didn't bury farm workers at a time. Last thing, I don't want to hog all this time, but I was marching with Martin Luther King III for farm workers' rights in California last year. And we were walking, and there were farm workers talking about women, talking about how in the fields they have to protect each other when they go to the bathroom because there's snakes and stuff that bite them when they use the restroom because there's no bathrooms. And Martin was very intrigued by this. And I just didn't get it why. And then I heard him talking later on, and he said something to the effects of, that's what slave women used to have to do for each other. And there was something so profound about here we are all these years later, and we talk about slavery and where it's been and where it is, but yet we have farm worker women who face the same challenges that slaves faced. We have farm workers facing the same work that slaves faced. And there was just something about it. And I bring that up because as much as we're doing, sometimes it's the struggles of people. And it's hearing things like that that drive me to go a little harder, push me to go a little further, push me to challenge people a little bit more to be better. So I don't think it's one moment or one person. I think it's a constant of the work and the struggles from my grandfather and others that reminds me of why we have to keep doing this and pushing ourselves.
Okay, so we are going to shift now to education. And it's for both of you again. Ms. Meruelo, we'll start with you. What do you think is the importance of higher education institutions for Hispanic communities, either in the economic or civil engagement realms? And I'd also add, what advice would you give? I know at Rio and within the Maricopa district of community colleges, there's a lot of first-generation students who may not have the proper, the natural networks of support to pursue their academic or professional goals. What advice would you give them as far as how important education is and how to sort of progress forward and build those networks so that they can have a daughter like you standing on stage one day?
Oh my gosh, that's a loaded question. All right, well, so first of all, I will say, so I personally, my whole family moved out from California to Arizona last year after we had bought in the team, and we made a commitment to be here and to make sure that one day we bring a Stanley Cup and we bring a new stadium and we do awesome things. So it's only been a year since I've been in Arizona, and I've had the privilege of getting to meet so many different nonprofit partners, educators, leaders within this state that have taught me what the biggest issues are, right? Because each state is different. And what I've learned is that one of the main issues in Arizona is obviously education, right? and ranked between the states, we are one of the lowest with our reading proficiency in third grade level. And the reason that's such a big issue is because it will stop a person from socioeconomic stability and success later down the line if they are unable to reach that level. And it's so simple, and yet it's one of the biggest deterrents, right? So I get to learn from you guys constantly about what the biggest issues are, but for me in education, it's really ensuring that our Hispanic community has that support, that they can make it through third grade, they can make it through high school, and they can make it to college, because we all know that in this country, a college education is invaluable, and it will take you so far and ensure that you will have a platform to land back on, right? And get communities out of that spiral of poverty. And that's what the data shows. That's what all the data will show it, right? That you need that college degree to ensure that your family can break out of that spiral. So what you guys do as educators, as supporters, as mentors, as leaders is invaluable, not only to the state, but more importantly to those communities that really need it, because without that degree, at some point in life, it will hurt you, right? And I'll give one example. We've got a family friend who moved here from Cuba and has a family, and I think the reason that she was unable to finish her college degree was because she had gotten pregnant. And now, she's got 2 kids and has a great job, and she works in the medical field doing sales. And a couple months ago, she went out to try and get a promotion, and the recruiter and the manager looked at her and was like, "Oh, I'm looking at your resume, but this is so weird. I don't know why, but we can't validate your GED. We don't have your degree. Like, something happened, the paper came back, and I don't know." And she's like, "I never got it." And they're like, "Oh yeah, we can't give you this position." And it's moments like that, right, where yeah, you'll stand on your own 2 feet, but at some point in time, it's going to stop you, right? And so it's so important. And I give her major kudos, because she actually went back to school as a 45-year-old and went to go get that degree, and is now finishing it, and is going to go back to that same person and say, "No, I have it." But I share that story because, as a Cuban single mom, now she looks back and is like, "Gosh darn it, I should have just finished it," right? And that's the message I share with all of you, is like, it's so important. It's so, so important in this country. And it is unfortunate that you do need that degree, and it is an investment of time and resources and energy. But the biggest message is ensuring that, we have that support system, and that the school can come together to make sure that these communities and individuals have the resources they need to finish and get across the finish line, because at some point it will come back. So.
Yeah, the one thing I would push back on is I actually think every state faces the same issues, right? I think it's more broad. It's as opposed to just education, it's how do you provide for your family in the long term, right? And this is actually, I would say this isn't even something new. If you look throughout art history, it talks about access to education once we kind of learned about what its value was, right? We've talked about being able to take care of your family with a job. We've talked about healthcare, being able to make sure your family gets medicine. So these are all things that have been struggles. If you look throughout art, going back even before colonization, there is art that reflects the needs to be able to educate your children, teach them new skills. So I think that this is a thing that we just haven't been able to solve as a society. Yeah. And I think that part of that is, and that's why in every state it's a little different. Some people it's K through 12, other people it's the access to college. And so I do think that this is a situation that we've got to solve as humanity, not just each state. The other thing I'd say is we need to get rid of the stigma that there's something less valuable if you attend a community college, right? There's a stigma that somehow you're less than, your value's not equal to, when the truth is it's your pocketbook wasn't equal to, right? In a lot of cases, that's what it is. It also could be maybe this college setting was just too much of an overhead. It was not financially, but emotionally. You need something a little bit more pace, right? Maybe your family needs you to help contribute. So you kind of got to do school on the side while you're helping your parents who probably don't have an education or a higher education. So I think that's one thing we need to break. We also need to break the stigma around trade schools and things, apprenticeships. And I think education a lot of times is only looked at as a college. And I think there's plenty between high school and a four-year university. I think there's plenty of education that we can do in institutions, as well as, my grandfather would say that he thought everybody should take 2 years off from high school to college. He thought everyone should go work for the Peace Corps. Like, that's who he was, right? But his real thing was that, like, you don't really know what you're doing coming out of high school. Like, you're kind of just going. And that if you took the time, you might go and do it and find something that you're actually craving your passion towards and moving towards. So when I think about education for our community, I think about all of it. I think about, how we have children who are being on a slower track because they have ESL, right? Children who have to do ESL typically are put in slower track programs, when the truth is most people don't realize they're at home translating documents for their parents. Medications, right? I'm sure you all have students, and even some of you, trying to explain to your parents as a kid, I know that's what the pharmacist told you, Mom, but look at Ma, it says something different here. Mom, it doesn't actually mean that or trying to explain on banking information. I was talking with someone who at 10 years old, her father was hurt and lost his job, and she had to take care of all the financial banking. This person was also in ESL. Do you really think they're on a slower track? Or do you think they just probably have more things going on in their life that your 2 + 2 doesn't manage when they're trying to balance a checkbook and make sure the bills stayed on for their family? So I think when we think about education, we have to stop breaking down just the traditional, hey, A + B, AC, K through 12, that we actually need to look at the whole institute of the education system, but also what we're providing in the communities afterwards. In Phoenix, you have, PAC, right, which is after-school program, which is fantastic. Why don't we get more teachers there who could do tutoring for students who need help and make that available? And sometimes that's where the help is. So as well as I agree with fully funding teachers, funding community college, paying everybody equally, I think we also need to look at the structure and how we set up and what we ID as what people need and what people don't need.
Awesome, thank you for that. So we're going to continue on with a bit more about education. So just a quick recap. Earlier, Dr. Kate Smith mentioned that we are a Hispanic Serving Institute. So just really quickly, an HSI is an institution of higher learning that has an enrollment of at least 25% Hispanic students. But for us, it's much more than that. We hope to make an impact on the community we serve. So as a newly designated HSI, what can Rio Salado College do to help complement the impact initiatives that you or others in your networks are currently engaged in? I'll start with you.
Gotta make sure I turn off the microphone. You're going to hear my little taps and little fidgety things I do. I think it's what I have found in institutions in general is that a lot of times we put Latinas and Latinos in leadership position, but they're not actually set up to succeed or take leadership. They're put on a committee with 9 other people, 8 other people, and they're, we're going to vote on it. The 8 other people are white men. You're the only Latina. I don't need to tell you how this goes. I'm sure you see this a lot more. And then it's like, why didn't you say so at the meeting? You're all, I did. The thing is, we voted on it. The 8 white heterosexual men voted one way. The Latina voted another way. This is what we're going to get, right? I'm sure, what is that, about 15 times a day for you? That? Maybe a little more, right? And I think that we have to take that into consideration when we appoint people to committees, whether it be students, professors, community leaders, that if you're just going to appoint one and leave them on their own, you're actually not helping the solution, you're hurting it. Because they don't feel like they have power, and when they go back in the community, they're going to say, I don't have power, don't join this board. And that's not what we need. What we need them saying is, hey, I need one more person on this board. I need one more person on this call. I need one more Latina or Latino with the same experience to say, hey, I agree, let's dive in a little deeper. And I can tell you when those start moving from 8 to 1, to 7 to 2, to 6 to 3, you actually start having real conversations where our community is able to bring out their best. 8 to 1, you're just trying to survive in that meeting. I've sat in them where you're like, this meeting cannot get over quick enough. I know where this is going. I literally have 4 other things I got to do. And then you're like, watch this. 8-1, weird, right? And I know we all face that in different areas, whether you're in a PTA, a board meeting, a school, a classroom, whether you're Latina or Latino or Black or any other marginalized community, LGBTQ. And the way we do it is by letting those institutions know one is not enough. Creating the space, like you do with your equity inclusion degree, where everybody has the same opportunity to reach that goal, not just the person you appointed. And I think those are the big things I would encourage you to do as you build out these committees and as you start building out committees that look at these, not just 1 or 2 Latinos and not just the 1 or 2 that are in everything. Sometimes the person that has is like, yeah, I'm a community person, that's not my gig. You're exactly who we need.
I love that. So I'll keep this one short, but really I would say there's so many businesses out in Arizona that want to partner with community colleges and want to partner with higher education to do good, right? It's just about making sure that we're connecting. And that's something that I see a big gap in, I would say, with all the different companies that I meet and all the different schools that we go out to, is that you all want the same thing, but we're not connecting. And you would be surprised how many businesses are so excited and willing to open their network, open their doors, and create a partnership for your students, and to come and do things like this on a big scale, not only to inspire, but also to be a resource and a support system, right? And so for us, and I'll speak on our behalf, as an organization, we pride ourselves, and from my family at the top all the way through, on creating long-lasting, impactful relationships with our educators and with our communities, because we have a responsibility to be advocates for good, right? And as a sports team, we don't take that lightly, right? Because we are the face of a community. And so I would say, just, it's different, but kind of adding on, right? It's like when we do create these boards and we go to these meetings and all those things, absolutely ensure that we are represented across all underrepresented minorities, right? But at the same time, make sure that we are reaching out and collaborating with these other businesses and other entities that want to support and want to be there, and when we come together, we can make that impact. But I think that there's not enough communication going on, is my take.
So I know we had a few more questions, and I'm looking around for CJ for, do we want to keep going or open it up to the audience at this point? Go ahead. Okay, perfect. So, Mr. Chavez, this question is for you. Your family's legacy goes back a long way. How can we in the community, in the Rio Salado community, support that legacy that you and your family have made?
So I think the great start is becoming a Hispanic Education Institute. I think that's a great place to start. I do think that it's about also, you know, look, my grandfather was not a person who liked things being named after him. He just was not his thing. He didn't like receiving awards. That's just not his thing. And for a while, I struggled on, like, why do we do this? Like, why do we name schools after him and bridges? Not what he would have wanted. He would want us doing the work. And then somebody put it to me, when they named a Navy ship after him, and someone mentioned it to me, and was like, you know, everybody who ever enters that Navy ship will know his name. And whoever serves on it will know his history. And look, it's a humanitarian, it carries weapons, ammunition. I was not thrilled about that. My grandfather was a steward of peace, and that's a different conversation we could have on a different panel. But it helped me to understand that I can only be in so many places. My family members, we can only tell so many stories, that there's a certain way to get you to go to that next level. Having Navy ships, having schools, having parks, having things named after them is a great way. I would also say continuing his work, making sure that we're providing the opportunities. Look, his work was all about making sure that farm workers' children have the same opportunities as growers' children. That's it. When given the same opportunity, they can achieve great things. They can become astronauts. They can become brain surgeons. They can become city council people. They can become these roles. And I would encourage the school to do that, to make sure that you're always opening it so that way farm workers' children have the same opportunity as the growers' children here in this institution, whether it's making funds available through scholarships, whether it's providing extracurricular education opportunities to help people who say, hey, you know what, I struggle a little bit in this. We need to get you a little bit more, all right? Or even supporting Hispanic student bodies, Latino student bodies, and those types of things as they build, because I think those are the things when people can identify a community within a community, that it actually helps them build that strength to help everybody. And so I think that would be the biggest thing, is as often as possible, making sure that we're sharing his values and providing that.
Thank you. That was a really good answer. Thank you. So, Ms. Meruelo, can you talk to us about what it's like working in a male-dominated industry like sports? And what advice would you give to younger Latinas who want to work for a large organization or in the sports industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's probably the question that I get asked the most every time I come and speak somewhere. So I made sure to add that one because I think I'm probably a great person to talk on it. All right, so here's my personal story. So when I was a little girl, my dad took me and my siblings everywhere. We went to every meeting, to every board meeting, to anywhere he went in business, he took us. And so for me, I was used to walking into a room and sitting in the back and listening and being a part of it, right? And then as I got older, I had a seat at the table, right? And then one day I sat at the table and I felt like I had to say something, and then I was like, well, my first thought was, okay, well, I got to say it. And then my second thought was, well, why would 10 men care what I have to say? And that's the truth. And I sat there and I went home and I was like, oh, I should have said something and I didn't. And I didn't believe that they genuinely cared. And the truth is that if I don't raise my hand and say something, then who will, right? And the truth is, and the other lesson I learned was that my qualities, which I always thought had no room in business, right, which was being empathetic, patient, kind, listening, loving, right, like all those things are actually what's needed in business now, today, more than ever before. And so I was like, okay, all right, hold on a second. No. I do belong at this table. I do have a voice. It's going to sound very different than the other 10 males in here, but it still has to be said. And that's now today the lesson that I want to share with other females. It's like, if you get that chance to sit in a room, don't be quiet. And when you do feel the need to say something, please speak up, because if your voice isn't heard, then it won't be said. And chances are, whenever I'll give an example of reasons I raised my hand. I'm like, well, have we thought about how that organization's going to care? Or what about the relationship? Have we thought about how that's going to impact our relationship, right? So coming from a different perspective, which so many females in this room are superhero mothers, are caring, amazing individuals that have this different perspective that would be lost otherwise. So that's my first take. And then the second part is, my best advice to any female is to sit down. Well, first of all, how many of you in the room, just out of curiosity, and I hope you guys do this exercise with your students, how many of you in the room can actually raise your hand and tell me what your strengths and weaknesses are? Okay, good. I see mature adults in the room. Fantastic. Whenever I do that with most students, not a single, or any college student, any high school student, any elementary speak at, nobody can raise their hands. And the biggest issue I see, right? Because when you can identify what your strength is, then you are confident in yourself, you believe in yourself, chances are you're really good at what you're doing, and you're not afraid to speak up, right? Because you have confidence in your knowing and your ability. So my number one advice is for anyone, and I hope you share this, is sit down and figure out what your strengths are. What are you really good at? Are you really good at public speaking? Are you good at being analytical? Are you good at numbers? Are you good at communicating or people or connecting, right? What is it that you're really good at, and what is it that you're really bad at, right? And if you're not doing what you're really good at every single day, you are wasting your time, okay? You are wasting your time. Make sure that you are doing what you are good at every single day and work on it and become that expert, because that's what's going to drive you forward and give you that voice when you're in that room and you feel really small. So, there you go.
Well, thank you so much. That's very impactful. We're definitely gonna, we'll chat after. This is awesome.
Okay.
Thank you guys both. We're gonna hand over the mic to our very own Dr. Floyd Harden.
You all can stay up here. Stay up here. Can we give Becca and Saffron another round of applause, please? Like, great job, ladies. Yes, absolutely. Alexis and Alejandro, thank you both for coming today. Thank you for sharing your stories. Stories matter, right? They help to, often they say, it doesn't matter where you come from, it just matters where you're going. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Our stories help to color our experiences. They shape what schools we go to. They shape who we marry, if we marry, right? And so thank you for sharing your stories, because your stories are now part of our story as Rio Salado College. So thank you all so much for coming again, Alejandro. And Alexis, we will be calling on you now that you are a Rio family member. So can we give Alejandro and Alexis another round of applause, please? We have a number of questions that actually have come in and that were actually pre-fielded and everything, so it gives us an opportunity to continue the conversation. And so if you both are open to it, we definitely, like I said, we will call on you, since we will take the invitation to call on you and to call on you again now that you all are partners of Rio Salado College. So we have so many actually questions still left from students and from staff members, but we have one more fabulous student who wants to share her experience, and we cannot end the program without hearing from her. So we will continue the conversation if you guys are open to it. We have a number of different forums that we do, so really excited to continue the conversation with you all. But at this time, I have the honor of introducing our very own Maria Elena Aguirre. Mari, please come close us out.
Thank you, Dr. Harden. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I was really honored to come to this event for our Hispanic Heritage Appreciation. My name is Maria Elena Aguirre, and I am a very proud third-generation Hispanic woman. But I am not afraid to admit that pride was not always there. For the majority of my life, I would introduce myself as Mari, or Mari Elena, and I would say Aguirre, which just makes me cringe. But as I got older and I got to connect more with amazing leaders like we have here, and my own family, learning more about my grandfather's journey, I gained that strength to identify as my true name, Maria Elena, because it wasn't about making it easier on others or accommodating others. It was about having my true own identification. So I am so excited to really embody that pride now and hear from, again, of such powerful leaders. Mr. Chavez, your advocacy and your journey that you've had in leading your family's legacy is exactly the kind of strive and resilience we all aim to have as community leaders. And Ms. Meruelo, your amazing leadership just as a female Latina it speaks volumes on what we can do and shows the voice of Hispanic pride and strength. So I truly thank you both for your invaluable service. I hope to one day be able to somewhat fill those shoes in being a Hispanic leader. I hope that everyone here today feels that same motivation that I do now, whether you identify as part of the Hispanic community or not. And more importantly, I hope that you walk away with the determination to give back and support and be the voice of the Hispanic community. Whether it's big or small, every step that we all take, it makes a difference and it gets recognized. So do your part to help the Hispanic community, whether it's through donating, volunteering, or continuing to attend great events like this. Thank you so much.
I want to again thank those that attended online. Thank you all so much. We have your questions. We've captured them. We will continue the conversation. And so we're really, again, just so pleased and thank you all for coming. At this time, we are going to wrap up the event. There should be a QR code. If you would, again, as we are moving our DEIB efforts across the organization and moving into spaces where we're elevating them, so it's not just programming, but moving into really data capturing. We are really excited about our walk as a DEIB council, if you will, trying to make sure that we are embedding all of our efforts in the fabric of the organization in ways that truly create impact. And this is one of them. And so being able to have amazing partners come and share their expertise and be a part of our learning, our journey, is just exactly what we are here to do. And so part of that is through data, right? So we need both the community action as well as the data to make sure that we have the numbers and that we are truly driving impact. So for those of you online, if you would, for those of you here in person, if you would please regard the QR code. If you would go ahead and take the survey, the conclusion survey, it helps our DEIB council to continue putting on programming like this that is truly impact work. So at this time, we thank you. We open the auditorium for celebration. I think was one of the themes that we took from today, is being able to celebrate all of us being here together for one purpose, and that purpose is impact. So thank you all.